In today's reading, I want to reflect on something that often becomes clear only with time. How wisdom arrives long after the moments that needed it most. We look back on earlier versions of ourselves and realized we might have lived differently, being more present, or recognized the value of what we had while we had it. But life is not lived in hindsight. It unfolds in the present, in the relationships we're in, the places we inhabit, the days that seem ordinary while they're happening. Even the difficult or unhappy periods are part of that unfolding. Recently, there has been a lot of discussion about loneliness, what some call a loneliness epidemic, and for many people, that experience is very real. But loneliness can also be something else, not only absence, but a kind of waiting, a period in which something new is quietly forming. The text we're about to read speaks to that idea, that solitude, uncertainty, even the feeling of not knowing where one belongs. That might not be an empty space, after all. So listen not as if something needs to be solved, but as if something is being prepared. We're looking at Letters to a Young Poet. Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms and like books that are written in a very foreign tongue. Do not now seek the answers, which cannot be given to you, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. Unnecessary loneliness is not something one can flee from. It is something one must endure until it begins to speak differently. Everything is gestation and then bringing forth. To let each impression and each germ of a feeling come to completion wholly in itself, in the dark, in the unsayable, the unconscious, beyond the reach of one's own intelligence, and await with deep humility and patience the hour of the birth of a new clarity. That alone is living. Try to raise the sunken feelings as if they were buried treasure. We are so afraid of silence, because it confronts us with ourselves. You must give birth to your images. They are the future waiting to be born. Fear not the strangeness in yourself. The future enters into us in order to transform itself in us long before it happens. For one human being to love another, That is perhaps the most difficult task that has been entrusted to us. It is a work for which all other work is but preparation. You are so young, so before all beginning, and I want to beg you, as much as I can, to be patient toward all that is unresolved in your heart, and to try to love the questions themselves. Well, what stays with me in this text is the idea of compassion, not for others, but for oneself. Periods of loneliness, uncertainty, or waiting are not smooth experiences. They move in waves. Some days feel almost peaceful. Others feel heavy and without direction. In those moments, the most necessary thing may simply be kindness towards oneself. The recognition that this, too, is part of being alive. Not a failure, not a mistake, but a process. Wisdom rarely arrives while something is happening. It comes later, when we look back and understand what we could not see at the time. The text ends with the words, "You are so young, so before all beginning," and I don't think that speaks only to age. Each day, in a quiet way, offers a new beginning. Each morning opens a new space in which something could take shape. A thought, a decision, a different way of being with oneself. A beginning is not something that happens once and is finished. It is something that returns, sometimes quietly, sometimes unexpectedly, again and again through life. We often imagine that beginnings belong only to youth or to certain moments that seem decisive. But in truth, they are much closer than that. They are always within reach, even when we feel far from them. Like waves in the ocean, they do not arrive a single time and disappear. They gather, recede, and gather again. And so there is always the possibility of another start, not necessarily dramatic, not necessarily visible to anyone else, but real nonetheless. Sometimes the future enters quietly through patience, through endurance, through the willingness to remain open even when nothing seems to be happening. To remain present long enough that something within us has the chance to come forward, something quieter, more honest, that cannot force itself into being, but must be allowed to emerge. The inner truth does not arrive loudly. It speaks in a whisper. And only when we are still enough, we can hear it and allow it to take shape. And perhaps that is enough, to stay present long enough for the next beginning to arrive.